Well, hello
This
today.
is segment 4.
This is segment 4. Well, it's nice to see you again today, and we're going to have a few minutes with Tom. And today, in our real estate chat, I think we're going to take up the ball and start talking about condominiums, since they're a very hot topic today, and on everyone's mind and on everyone's lips. So, Tom, since you're an expert in the real estate area and have been for many years, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about the condominium market, which I'm sure you're well versed in. What should a potential buyer be looking for when they buy a condominium? What type of things should they look for?
Thanks for asking. The most important thing, as in any type of real estate, is location. Okay. Now, one of the big concerns that has arisen lately is the quality of construction that's associated with a lot of the condominium high-rises that are going up, particularly in our urban areas, but you know, it's sort of ethnocentric to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these buildings with all the glass exteriors and the glass balconies and stuff like that are, by relative standards, relatively inexpensive to build versus having, you know, a concrete exterior and so on and so on. But I think the offsetting of that is that the economic life is also shortened. So that, you know, instead of having a building that would normally have a 60 to 80 year economic life, you might be looking at something that has a 40 to 50 year economic life. And that will have ramifications down the road. But again, in a word, location is the most important thing, and followed closely by the quality of construction.
Just to extend a bit on the location, since I would imagine most condominiums are generally in urban areas to begin with, people would say, well, what difference does it make? I'm in an urban area. Does shopping present issues? Does you know, the proximity to, you know, public transportation, even in urban areas? What about community centers for the children's schools?
Well, those are very good points. You know, a lot of the condominiums, the high rises that are going up, lack some of the community services that you would think would be very important, like schools, community centers, mm-hmm. you know, proximity to athletic clubs and so on and so on.
Which is all part of a family mix if you're
Right.
going to live urban and live with a family in a condominium.
Right, and then some of these larger complexes have overlooked the fact that there has to be a community, a social strata, or whatever way you want to put it, a community based sense of living. It should be almost like a small village within
right.
a larger town. Right?
And if you take the number of people who live in some of these large buildings, you know, 70, 80 floors, then it makes sense, because you really have a village in a building, and you have
right.
to really take care to incorporate that. That brings me to the next question. Should a prudent purchaser request a condominium status certificate when they're buying a condominium, and if so, why, and what does it include?
Well, this new condominium status certificate is really the old estoppel certificate.
Right.
And I would say it's one of the most preeminent things that a potential purchaser should ask for prior to firming up any home purchase or condominium purchase.
Right.
And the simple reason for that is that it A, has the condominium rules in it, and B, it has the financial status of the condominium corp. It has the budget, mm-hmm. it has the status certificate, and most importantly, it has the reserve study forms in there. Basically, what it does in a nutshell is give you an encapsulated idea of the financial integrity of the building, which is very important regarding maintenance fees and moving forward. And also it'll give you an indication of the structural integrity of the building. If they're already having problems 5 years in or 6 years in, and they're starting to have to build up a reserve fund, that's usually a pretty good indicator that there are some structural issues with the building, whether it's with the underground parking or with the windows or with the balconies. This is probably the best way that you can get an indicator, and the best way to go about that is to make sure that your lawyer has access to the estoppel certificate before
or during your conditional period.
Exactly.
So you can review it with your solicitor.
Exactly.
Okay. I understand some of them are fairly complicated too and have a lot of small print, so it's a good
right.
idea to spend some time with them.
Pay the extra dollar and have your solicitor.
Advice.
Right.
Okay. perfect. Thank you so much. That's a very helpful tip, and I bet you that's something that people are often in a rush when they're very excited and they're looking at a unit. They want to take their
There's
time.
always the euphoria of buying.
Right.
But these are the things that will stand you in good stead.
In your purchase.
In your
In
purchase.
the long run, I would say, if you're going to make this a
I think you have another question
I
or two
do.
for me.
What else is important when considering the purchase of a condo?
Again, a good question, Karen. It's a case that the mix of residencies in there, like how many, what's the percentage of renters, okay? What's the percentage of, how would you say, investors or offshore buyers, right?
Right.
That'll have ramifications because people who live abroad probably won't be rushing to participate in increasing reserve funds if, you know, in one thing and another. If you have a high mix of renters, the condominium board has a harder time implementing policies because there's a, you know, there's an attitude of non-compliance.
Right.
And of course, you know, pride of ownership is not normally not as strong as it is with the, you know,
An
with some
owner-occupied
unit. So
right.
those type of things should be of more than modest interest to you when you're going to buy. Who's living there? You know, why are they living there, and so on and so on.
Right.
You know,
and I would imagine that down the road, these things would prove to be more interesting in terms of whether you had, if you had a high percentage of renters and offshore investors in a building, you have a lot of turnover with tenants and so on and so forth. So there's a general sense that perhaps there's not a permanency in the buildings, and therefore, you know, if you were in a family situation, you may not want to stay in a situation or a building where there's a high number of renters because the turnover is so extreme.
The lower the frequency of turnover, the better for the building, because there's that greater sense of stability.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Thank you very much for your
thanks
time
for the
today,
questions.
and I think they were great answers. So I think this was great. Taking time with Tom, a few moments with Tom, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Okay.
Have a great day. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time.
You're welcome.